Let's get straight into it. Aquil Ahmed and David Rose join me now. Aquil, let's start with you. Why remove Israel from this competition?
Well, that's a different question to what I was actually originally going to talk about. Was actually when I say double standards, that's the problem. Actually, it's not whether or not you should remove Israel as such. It's if you've removed Russia, then do you have a conversation about removing Israel? I mean, for me, I'm not really bothered about the Eurovision Song Contest in that sense, but I can understand that particular kind of argument, and I understand the anger as well. At a time when you're in the middle of a war, do you have somebody who's from one of those countries involved in this conflict? Do you have them in a celebratory kind of like competition? I personally don't really care. If I'm really honest, I don't really care about the Eurovision Song Contest anymore. But I can actually see the two arguments here. One is it does feel like double standards, and also the same with FIFA and other organisations like that. And secondly, it feels like, for many people, it will feel quite bad taste. But having said that, I understand as well, there'll be lots of people who say, well, it's not bad taste and Israel deserves to be there. Then we'll get into another conversation, which is, it's the Eurovision Song Contest. Why do we have Israel and Australia, for that matter, in this? And what does that actually really say about our thinking about what Israel is, and actually what Israel itself thinks it is? So I think there's a lot of questions here to be asked that go beyond what is effectively a show which some people like, but the vast majority of us, probably it passes us by.
Well, let's throw that over to David Rose then. This is a legitimate conversation to be having, says Aquil.
Well, I'm slightly baffled. To coin a phrase, I see nul point in the argument that he is making. To compare Israel's actions currently with those of Russia is just offensive. Russia launched an unprovoked invasion of a sovereign state. It has committed extremely well documented cases of murder on a vast scale. It has butchered and tortured prisoners. It has smashed towns to smithereens and continues to attack civilian infrastructure the length and breadth of Ukraine. Israel was the victim of an unprovoked terrorist attack on October the 7th, in which at least 1,200 people were murdered. Many were subjected to appalling sexual violence. Hamas continues to have 150 hostages, many of them who, regrettably, may well be dead. I don't quite see how there is an equivalence between Israel and Russia that would justify Israel's removal from the Eurovision Song Contest, nor indeed what that could possibly achieve.
Well, let's throw that back to Aquil. These are two completely different situations. Yeah. Russia is the aggressor, whereas Israel is the victim.
Well, I think he's not. I thought we were having a conversation here rather than point scoring. The fact of the matter is, a lot of that is not all. Some of it, I actually agree with a lot of what's been said, but I also disagree with a lot of what's been said in that respect. The fact of the matter is, if you're the aggressor or not the aggressor, in some people's eyes, Russia is an aggressor or it's not an aggressor. Israel is an aggressor. Hamas is an aggressor. It depends. Everybody has an interpretation of this. The question is, for those people that feel strongly about it, is their opinion, is it warranted to have a conversation about whether or not they feel Israel should be included in this? I'm not saying that they should or shouldn't. I'm simply saying there are lots of people who will feel that actually it feels inappropriate. And there are lots of people who will disagree with what's just been said. Not to say that it didn't happen, October 7th didn't happen, because of course it did, and what Hamas did was outrageous. But also at the same time, we have seen, as was said about what Russia has done to the civilian infrastructure in the Ukraine, well, we've also seen what's been done to the civilian infrastructure in Gaza as well. So it's a very nuanced conversation. It's not the time to be kind of like making blanket statements like that. I'm simply saying it's a legitimate conversation to be had. Is this the right thing to do? Should there be a conversation about whether or not Israel should be included in the Eurovision Song Contest or not? I don't care, personally, like I said, but some people do care. And I think having that conversation is healthy. Ultimately, I don't think it will make a difference. I think Israel will be in there, and will they win or not? I don't know, because the voting in the Eurovision Song Contest seems to be all over the place anyway.
David, is this conversation healthy, free speech? Should we not be supporting these sorts of conversations?
I don't care if people want to have a conversation, and I'm happy to participate in it. But if we are having a conversation, I will express my own opinion in it, which is exactly what I'm doing. Now, I just want to pick up on one point here that, it said no one denies that what Hamas did was terrible on October the 7th. Unfortunately, That is very much not the case. There is a growing body of what I would call October the 7th denial out there. It's all over the internet. It's on platforms like TikTok. And, October the 7th denial has become a kind of propaganda industry from those who effectively support the Hamas terror group. Now, that's important to remember because, yes, there is no doubt whatsoever about what Hamas did, but millions of people are now falling prey to propagandists who very much claim the reverse. Well, that is not the context in which, the European Song Contest, Eurovision Song Contest seems to have a great deal of relevance.
Well, I'm afraid we have... no, sorry, Aquil, if you can very briefly come back on that. We are running out...
Well, I was just going to say, for many people, I mean, look, I'm not saying for 1 second that I think October 7th didn't happen, but also, there are lots of propagandists on both all sides, because that's what happens when you're in the middle of an actual conflict. People say it. People are saying that there is nothing being done against the infrastructure in Gaza, but we see the images and we know what's around us. The fact of the matter is, this is no one side is behaving well in this particular conflict, because that's what happens when you're in the middle of a conflict. And that's why for some people it feels like it's worth having a conversation about whether it's proper for Israel to be in this competition at this moment in time. Whether it will make a difference, I don't think it should. And actually, whether they want to be in there, so why not?